course, there's also the sniff test, okay? This is a little bit harder to quantify, so I'm just calling it the sniff test, which is just, in addition to sort of these notions of unfairness before, there's more commonsensical notions that are sort of like, you know it when you see it. And even a monkey knows unfairness when they see it. So there were capuchin monkeys that were taught to hand in rocks with a human in exchange for food. Turns out monkeys, they like grapes more than cucumbers. Neighboring monkeys were offered inequitable exchanges. So let me just describe this in the longer form of this series of slides. I actually have a link to a YouTube video. I encourage you guys to just, you can just type in, like, when you get off of the Meetup, you can just type in, like, monkey unfairness or whatever, and it's one of the first hits you'll see in YouTube. It's a really, really entertaining video, and it's only like 50 seconds. I highly encourage you to watch it. Somebody says they already watched. Okay. And what it is you can actually see in real time, one monkey hands in a rock. He's happy with what he gets in return. The neighbor, which is watching this, they hand in a rock. They get a cucumber. They're unhappy with the cucumber. They go and try and get more rocks. They want to get the grape. Instead, they get cucumbers. And you can see the monkey's profound displeasure at this, which is, he just starts going crazy. And it's very funny because it's also very human. Thank you for that, Adam, posting the link. Okay. I want to just also describe that these ideas, they go way back. This is not modern stuff. In Plato's Republic, Socrates engages in an argument with Thrasymachus. I think that's how his name is pronounced, but I should ask Giannis, about rulers, right? They talk about, the whole idea of the Republic is sort of like the ideal society, the ideal rulers. And fairness was connected to justice, which is an idea that is still common today, is this connection of fairness with justice. And justice is the realm of rulers because it really has to do with people in power making decisions, okay? One thing that came out of Plato's relaying of this dialogue is that justice is sort of this other directed form of reason that's aimed at non-zero sum goods. So it's the type of good for which there's a way to assign it such that your giving it doesn't lower you, so that we can all benefit. Okay, so that's one of the earlier recorded thoughts on fairness. Now, there's something in more modern times that comes out of the work of John Rawls. So in 1971, he wrote a very famous book on theory of justice. And the idea is now called the original position. And it's that, when you're thinking about principles related to fairness, you should adopt them from what's called a veil of ignorance. And the veil of ignorance is that you shouldn't use knowledge about contingent actual circumstances, namely without any selection bias, which is held by observers. So in other words, design a system of outcome distributions without knowledge of which protected attribute one might actually have. In other words, think about the society you would want to live in if you didn't know how you would be born. I don't know if I will be born male or female, black or white, rich or poor. What type of society should I want to be born into? Okay, so that's called the original position. Again, this is all like stuff from philosophy. The reason why it's relevant to machine learning and artificial intelligence is that these are all things that, in trying to control for fairness and trying to mitigate against unfairness in machine learning models, people have adopted these types of things into actual quantitative techniques. So for instance, trying to design a system of outcome distributions without knowledge of which protected attribute one might actually have, one could view that as like, you could try to what's called regularize a machine learning model. You could try to curate the training set, for instance. So there are these pre-processing, in-processing, and post-processing techniques and tools that practitioners are now starting to employ in order to try to safeguard against these unintended consequences of having machines make decisions which are, how to say, unfair. Okay, I talked a lot, and I see that I've hit about 20-minute mark. So with that, I just want to say one of our speakers did mention some literature, and I'll just, you may or may not know, this is a great book. This book by Christopher Bishop. It's called Pattern Recognition and Machine Learning. And of course, there's a standard one called Artificial Intelligence, A Modern Approach by Norvig and Russell, which is considered like the classic. And I would say, you know, if you're interested in this field, definitely like get a hold of those books because they're really tremendous resources.
Well, we got a few audience questions there. Okay. So one of the questions someone had, will AI make society more or less fair, in your opinion?
I mean, I'm speaking for myself now. I'm not speaking as a representative of Deloitte or
let's just
whatever.
Preface that right off the bat.
How to say? I'm cautiously optimistic. I really do. I worry. I worry about. I think smart people are thinking very hard about this stuff, and that's very reassuring. Like researchers at great institutions and the practitioners on the street are starting to really like make sure that they're taking these things into consideration. But you know, it's very hard to predict, and sometimes it is a game of catch up. So it's really hard to know, especially because again, these things are subtle to detect sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it'll be interesting just to kind of piggyback off that around kind of what's fair and just. I mean, when we're already starting to see these self-driving cars with all the AI technology. I mean, as soon as we have self-driving cars, there goes all the Uber drivers, there goes all the truck drivers, you know, and that's a whole industry that's going to be wiped out. So time will tell, I guess. We've got a couple of other questions here, if you don't mind.
Sure.
This one up the top here. So one of my questions, like when a new client comes to Deloitte and says, hey, we want to maybe get into data science, what are they looking to kind of get? Do they have any specific business objectives, or are they just saying, hey, we've got all this data, tell us what we can learn from it?
So there are both types. There are some clients who are very mature. So for instance, I'm on a project right now with a client who they're in the retail space. They're very mature. They have exceptionally sophisticated technology. They have their own data science team, and they have been developing products using machine learning already. Okay, and what they want is help getting to the next step and help really thinking creatively in different ways. Sometimes it's good to just have like new set of eyes, fresh ideas, that type of thing. But there are companies that are trying to sort of navigate more towards, I'm thinking that there are some companies that are not traditionally associated with like data science realm. I'm not going to name any of the clients, but just how to say, some of them would be in things like, I'm going to make up something like mining or something. So let's say mining, right? It's not traditionally like something you think of with like data science, but like, you know, they realize that this is sort of a trend and that this is something that may be of business value for them to add into their whole way of doing business. And they can come to Deloitte and try to decide like, what's the value add? What can we get out of data science? And then, you know, it sets up a conversation and a description of what types of products there are there. And this is the nature of consulting, is just working out what do you need as a business? And then let's understand sort of the landscape of that you're working in. And then let's try to architect out what a data science solution could look like. And then if that's a go, then it's just building it.
Great. And do you find that when you are doing these projects that if it's, say, a FMCG client or an accounting business or a tech firm or whatever,
Yep.
are you finding that when you are crunching the numbers and the data that you're kind of getting similar results? Like, maybe insurance companies a lot of them are finding that, hey, potentially retention is not great for this particular brand of customers or anything like that.
Well, I would say it's hard to generalize. I mean, so my work has been in a pretty broad range of clients, and I haven't seen any of those types of generalized patterns. I think maybe if you focus on something like insurance, or you focus on banking or whatever, maybe you will see like certain types of patterns emerging. But even within, even within one of the projects that I worked on was related to equity and pay. And, the people that I worked with had done similar work for a different client and found like very different results. And the patterns were like, it just was different. So, yeah.
Awesome. And I'll leave you be after one more final question.
Sure.
So how do you place the acceptance of AI models in terms of trust from the client, given that only 13 to 15% of models see production deployments from what this particular user knows?
Yeah. Okay. So the high level question is just the trust.
Sure.
So, I mean, these are, how to say, AI is a field that suffers from a lot of hype.
Yes.
Okay. I'm with you. Okay. And I'm personally, I'm not in the hype game. Okay. Deloitte is hired by companies that are trying to actually get products and get them out there and use them. They're paying money in order to do this. It's not just like blue sky research. I know that kind of thing does happen. I think that possibly one of the causes that this can happen with or large organizations is that there could be a disconnect between between the people who are architecting the technical computer science type solutions and the drivers of business. Okay. And when those two things aren't in alignment, you're going to have these projects that kind of fizzle out. They don't actually get deployed because the communication wasn't right. The product that was developed, it wasn't suited to what was actually needed. Okay. And so these things have to be thought through from the beginning. There has to be collaboration with both the technical side and with the business side. So that's one of the areas where, for instance, at a consulting firm, that's our strength. Okay. Mm-hmm. So thankfully, the products that we build at Deloitte, they do get deployed. I know what the questioner is asking, and yes, I agree. It's a field that has always suffered from tremendous hype. You go into the history of AI, and it came in waves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's a really interesting point about hype, and people say, there's a lot of hype around AI and stuff. I think there's a big boom in the market at the moment, for sure. That's what we're seeing. A lot of tech startups kind of launching, a lot of money being thrown from the VC side of things into these tech startups, which is great for the ecosystem. I kind of liken it a little bit to cloud computing. When cloud and those technologies first came out, every man and their dog, this was when I was back in Australia in kind of, mid-ish 2000s, every man and their dog was all about cloud and creating a cloud solution. But nobody really understood the true value of it in those early adoption years. But it wasn't until maybe 4, 5, 6 years later that we had that boom, that it was massively adopted and there was a more value to be driven from those implementations. And I think that's similar to kind of maybe what we're seeing with AI. Everybody's hype and buzz about it, but there's still a lot of value to be had for sure, but it's not going to be maybe for another 3 to 5 years until it's a lot more widespread to be valuable for other businesses. Again, my 2 cents.
And I view AI as one more tool in the data scientist toolbox. Okay, there's many tools, and AI is one of them. A deep understanding of scientific principles, how to form hypotheses, how to be careful, how to second guess yourself, how to control for variables, these types of things. These are like the foundational elements that you need to be successful in data science. And artificial intelligence is just one more tool that you can use to try to solve a problem.